Savoca here with Vendors Tech. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to show you quickly how to test a refrigeration deck for proper operation when the deck is not in your machine. So let's say you have a deck, it's outside of the machine for some reason, you have a spare, you buy one, and you want to put it in your machine. I would always perform this test before you put in a deck, a new one, a refurbished one into a machine, because you don't want to put it in there and then have it not work and then have to pull it out again. So test your decks before you put them in machines, or if you just want to know if a deck works after it's been sitting in on your shelf for 2 years, here's how you do it. Now, we're going to be addressing today the sealed system of the deck. So refrigerant, how to know if there's enough refrigerant in the system and it's not low, and that the compressor is pumping properly, that you don't have a system obstruction in your capillary line or filter or something. We're not going to address other things like how to know if your compressor is actually on or if your fan is running. I mean, those are things that we'll cover in a different video at a different time. Those are things you definitely need to check, right? You have to know what's supposed to be running. What you need to know the difference between your condenser fan, your evaporator fan, how to tell if your compressor is actually on, those kinds of things. And once it's in the machine, you may have other things like thermostats and relays that actually turn the compressor on and off. We're not dealing with that. This is just to test if your system has enough refrigerant in it and if the refrigerant is moving properly. In other words, the compressor is working, pumping, and you don't have system obstruction. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to plug our compressor deck directly into power. This video applies to really any deck that's in any soda machine that's ever made. You may run into certain soda machine decks like in USI machines maybe, or other ones that I may not be able to think of an example of immediately. Maybe something in an old AP combo where you don't have a traditional outlet plug like this that you could just plug into the wall or to an extension cord. If that's the case, you're going to have to get a little bit creative and figure out which wire inside your connection is your hot and your neutral, and then make your own harness to connect to them so you can power the deck separate from the machine. But most are going to have a plug like this that you can plug into an extension cord, and that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to plug it straight into an extension cord, or you could do this, plug it into the wall. This is a deck out of a Dixie Narco single price machine. These decks stay the same for all the way from the single price through the E model, through the P model. There are very few changes, same design concept. The evaporator just sat a little bit further back for the 3 deep machines. But yeah, this is a common Dixie Narco deck, representative of just about anything out there in any soda machine made by any company, Vendo, Royal, USI, Dixie, Crane. This is a test that needs to be performed at room temperature. Okay, so you don't want it to be excessively hot or outside. It won't work as well or at all. You also don't want it to be freezing cold, room temperature. And if you have any kind of HVAC or air system in the building that's on, you'll want to turn that off because you don't want airflow over the evaporator for this test. We want it to be sitting still with no airflow, which is why the next thing you're going to need to do, see between the evaporator here and the condenser fan, which is beneath this, which is going to be on during this test, we have this piece of foam or whatever it is that we use for transporting these decks to separate the evaporator and keep it safe from damage. But it's created a barrier here between the evaporator and the airflow that's going to be moving through the condenser that the condenser fan is going to be pulling. If this wasn't here, there would be all kinds of air moving here across the coils, and we wouldn't be able to perform the test we're about to perform. So you're going to need to get something, a big piece of cardboard, piece of foam, something, a rug, put it between your evaporator and the rest of the deck, like this. Now, you want to make sure that there's always something between. If you're moving these around, you don't want to damage this evaporator and damage the fins. You want airflow to be moving through here good, and you don't want to damage the tubing. So you should always separate your evaporator with something soft from the rest of the deck. So this should always really be here, but you need something that is reasonably wide, and I'll bring the camera over here in a minute, that keeps air from the evaporator. So now that we've gotten to that point, what we're going to be checking for is frost buildup on the evaporator. Now, a properly operating deck with the proper amount of freon or refrigerant charged into the system, if it sits for a certain period of time at room temperature with no airflow across the evaporator, you're going to have consistent and equal white frost buildup on the evaporator from top pretty much down to the bottom. The whole thing's going to get cold. You're going to have frost all the way across within 10 minutes. Usually it's shorter than that, but we're going to give it 10 minutes just so we get a nice buildup so you can see what it looks like. And so if you're wanting to test a deck, you can do this, set your timer for 10 minutes, and the evaporator should look like what this one's going to look like. If it doesn't, if you have frost, let's say, where your capillary line comes in, which I'll show you up close in a minute, and you just have frost right, where the capillary line starts to come in, and that's about it. Or if the frost is just on the top and the bottom of the evaporator is dry, as you'll see in other videos that we have on our channel, that is a clear indication that you're low on refrigerant, or potentially other things like a system blockage or compressor problem. Those are less common. Probably low on refrigerant if you see limited frost just where the capillary comes in and then on the immediate tubing in that loop afterwards. So I'm going to bring the camera up here and show you a couple things, and then the other thing you can check for when the compressor first turns on is within like the first 30 seconds where the capillary line comes in, and I'll grab the camera now and we'll show you this up close. So most all systems, all soda machines are going to have a capillary line coming from the high side, and this is going to be high pressure liquid coming into the evaporator right here. And you're going to actually be able to hear this. And if you have enough refrigerant in the system and everything is working well, you're going to hear a particular sound. Now, you don't have to, you can rely on the frost alone to determine if it's got enough refrigerant in the system. But it's very helpful to hear this sound I'm going to describe and then show you, because if you hear it, that's a very good thing, and it means that also means there's probably enough refrigerant in the system. So as the liquid starts coming up, it gets forced into this line under high pressure, comes up, zoom, 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 goes through all these loops, up here through the loops. You'll start to hear it, it'll kind of be a building up pressure sound. It'll be, and then when it finally, sprays into the evaporator, you'll hear the sound change from what we were hearing to something like this. It'll go, and you'll kind of hear that, you'll kind of hear a significant pressure change noise in the system. You can put your ear right here, listen for it, and you'll notice it. It'll be very distinct. So wherever your capillary line comes into the evaporator, that's where you want to check. This is your return line. This is not where you listen. You want to listen where the capillary comes in, because this is your incoming refrigerant and your outgoing refrigerant. All right, so we're going to turn it on here, and then we're going to listen for that sound. Hopefully the camera catches it. I'm not sure if it'll be quiet enough. This is a brand new compressor on this deck, so maybe it'll be quiet and you can actually hear it. So I'm going to set the camera down and plug this deck in, and then we'll come back and try and listen for that sound. Then we'll set the timer for 10 minutes and watch the frost buildup. So we're going to plug it in here. See what we can hear. That took about 20 seconds. I don't know if you could hear that sound change, but that's exactly what we wanted to hear. And just depending on the system, how much refrigerant's in it, that sound will be louder, more distinct than others. But that was a nice, clear, crisp sound of that refrigerant coming into the evaporator. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the camera here, and we're going to speed the video up. I'm going to let it sit here for 10 minutes, and we'll speed it up so you can watch the ice buildup as it occurs. Get that to come down a bit. All right, we're back. Here's my timer going off. That's 10 minutes. So as you can see, we have great. Now, there's a little strip at the bottom that's not quite frosted over yet, and that's fine. Part of that is because like I can feel back here, you know, you have air movement coming and like hitting this and bouncing back and blowing air through there just a little bit, and any kind of air movement will keep frost buildup down. But this looks great, especially on the front where there's far less air movement. We have a nice, complete frost covering. Okay, on the tubes, on the fins, it's over here on the accumulator. We have nice frost. So this deck is ready to work in a machine. It's not low on refrigerant. Works great, and this is what a working deck should look like. So, hope this is useful in your refrigeration diagnostic work. That's it, everyone. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Keeping your deck plugged in without airflow across the evaporator for 10 minutes is no problem. Don't leave it plugged in for much longer than that or for indefinite periods of time, because you'll start messing with the ability of the refrigerant to come from a liquid, turn back into a gas, and go back to the compressor as a gas if you don't have airflow and temperatures moving across the deck correctly for an extended period of time. So 10 minutes is fine, but don't let it run forever. Be sure you do this and save yourself some time before you put in a deck into a machine and then have to pull it out again because it doesn't work. I hope this video saves you some time. You all have a great day, and we'll be back again.